let up insight in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Now 1 month since the October 7th attack, 10,000 Gazans have been killed, among which are 4,000 children. Following a fresh round of talks between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden, we take a look at where the American leadership stands in the Middle East. Data show there have been more frequent appearances of U.S. strategic assets on the Korean Peninsula and Seoul-Washington joint drills this year amid incremental nuclear and missile threats coming from North Korea. Next week, U.S. Defense Chief Lloyd Austin is due in Seoul for military talks. The South Korean economy sees signs of moderate recovery in some areas, including semiconductors, though external risks still weigh on. That's according to the latest data. It's November 7th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. The Israel-Hamas conflict, now 1 month since the October 7th attack, shows little signs of dialing down. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again made it clear that Israel opposes a ceasefire as he discussed a tactical pause with U.S. President Joe Biden for humanitarian reasons. Yoon starts our coverage.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has so far made it clear that Israel will not support a ceasefire, rejecting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's proposal last week for a humanitarian pause unless the hostages are released. On Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden and Netanyahu had talks over a so-called tactical pause for humanitarian reasons, as well as to try to secure the release of the hostages held by Hamas. The White House said that Biden and Netanyahu have agreed to continue their discussions in the coming days, with Reuters reporting that U.S. National Security Coordinator John Kirby said the conversation was at the beginning stage, not the end. Shortly after the U.S. once again pressured Israel for a humanitarian pause, Netanyahu, in an interview with ABC News, reaffirmed his rejection of holding a temporary pause in the Gaza Strip.
Well, there will be no ceasefire, general ceasefire in Gaza without the release of our hostages. As far as tactical little pauses, an hour here, an hour there, we've had them before. I suppose we'll check the circumstances in order to enable goods, humanitarian goods to come in, or our hostages, individual hostages to leave.
Netanyahu also told ABC that he expects Israel will have the overall security responsibility in Gaza once the war ends. This statement followed anchor David Moore's question, addressing the earlier statement by President Biden, saying it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza and who should govern Gaza after the war is over.
I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility because we've seen what happens when we don't have it.
1 month into the Israel-Hamas battle, where does American leadership stand in terms of recent conflicts in Middle Eastern nations?
In my opinion, United States leaderships are somewhat working right now because that is the only reason that Israel started the low-profile military operation. The reason why Israel has started those kind of military tactic is because they really want to reduce the collateral damage and the civilian casualty, like United States requested.
However, the professor added that there are clear discrepancies between the Biden administration and the Israeli government in terms of post-war responsibilities. While Biden does not want an Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip, it seems that Israel thinks that this is the only way to get rid of Hamas's forces and therefore will occupy the area at least temporarily. Yoon, Arirang News.
So far, more than 10,000 Palestinians have been reportedly killed, and 1 child has been killed every 10 minutes because of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Gaza's health ministry said Monday that more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the armed conflict between Israel and Hamas. Among those killed, more than 4,100 are children. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called Gaza a graveyard for children, with the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency adding that 1 child has been killed every 10 minutes. The World Health Organization has also raised great concern over the health of pregnant women, new mothers, and infants in the Gaza Strip, where many hospitals and medical facilities have shut down due to ongoing airstrikes by Israel. According to the WHO, there are about 50,000 new mothers and pregnant women in the Gaza Strip, with more than 180 babies born every day. It added that 4,600 pregnant women and 380 newborns residing in refugee camps operated by the UN throughout Gaza need treatment. Meanwhile, Israeli forces advanced deeper into Gaza on Monday with more airstrikes overnight. Monday's airstrikes and ground attacks focused on the northern half of the Gaza Strip, where the Israel Defense Forces believe Hamas has most of its strongholds. On Sunday, the Israeli military struck over 450 Hamas targets while also taking control of a Hamas military compound. Within the compound were underground tunnels, observation points, and training facilities for Hamas fighters. Following a two-day suspension, dozens of foreign passport holders, as well as some medical evacuees on Monday, passed through the Rafah crossing from Gaza into Egypt. According to the Gaza Border Authority, Egyptians and foreign citizens already on pre-approved lists issued since last week were allowed through. 80 dual nationals and 17 medical evacuees left Gaza through Rafah, with 48 aid trucks crossing in the other direction. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Amid evolving threats from North Korea, South Korea says it has strengthened extended deterrence against the regime this year by cooperating with the U.S. From joint exercises involving strategic bombers to the deployment of a U.S. ballistic missile submarine, the two countries have sent warnings to the North multiple times as a show of force. Correspondent Bae Eun-ji explains.
South Korea and the U.S. have issued warnings to North Korea on 9 separate occasions so far this year, as they step up efforts to deter threats from Pyongyang. That's according to a report released by Seoul's Defense Ministry on Tuesday, which explained that U.S. forces stationed in South Korea and the deployment of U.S. strategic assets are a symbol of their extended deterrence against the North. On February 24th, South Korean and U.S. defense officials visited an American naval submarine base, Kings Bay, in Georgia. From March to July, the U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress engaged in combined aerial training exercises 5 times this year. The ministry explained that the B-52 bomber played a key role in enhancing the regular visibility of U.S. strategic assets on the Korean Peninsula, as agreed by President Yoon and U.S. President Joe Biden during their summit in April in Washington. Then in July, the U.S. Navy Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine, the USS Kentucky, visited Busan. A month after that, a B-52 bomber arrived at an airbase in Cheongju in a show of force against the North. This was the first time that the American strategic bomber had ever landed at a South Korean airbase. Lastly, South Korean and U.S. defense officials attended a test launch of Washington's Minuteman III ICBM in California last Wednesday. The Defense Ministry said this was the first time in 7 years and the second time ever that South Korean officials have attended an ICBM test launch by the U.S. Tuesday's report comes ahead of U.S. Defense Chief Lloyd Austin's visit to Seoul next week for an annual meeting with his South Korean counterpart, Shin Won-sik. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Latest data shows signs of recovery in the South Korean economy on the back of increased production in chips. Concerns remain, however, over high oil prices and interest rates globally. Our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
South Korea's economy is showing signs of moderate recovery in certain areas. According to a monthly report released by the Korea Development Institute on Tuesday, the ease in the slowdown of the economy was mostly driven by the rise in production across various industries. Overall production increased by 2.8% on year in September, higher than the 1.3% from a month earlier. Growth was seen in industrial production on the back of a recovery in semiconductor demand, with chip production surging 23.7% on year in September, compared to 8.4% the previous month. While service production showed a slowdown compared to the previous year due to the base effect, it saw a moderate increase of 0.4% from the month before due to the rise in demand for travel. Production in construction also showed continued growth. Meanwhile, exports showed a slight recovery on the back of increased exports to the U.S. Exports to the U.S. in October rose sharply by more than 17% from the previous year, but exports to China fell 9.5%. Vehicle exports maintained robust growth in October, and semiconductor exports showed signs of recovery. The increase in imports was mostly led by the rise in crude oil imports. Overall, the trade balance in October recorded a surplus of $1.64 billion. However, external factors continue to weigh on the South Korean economy as the global economy grapples with uncertainties such as monetary policy tightening and the Israel-Hamas conflict. Growing geopolitical tensions have fueled volatility in oil prices, and the continued high interest rates in major economies has led to subdued business sentiment. 이수진, Arirang News.
South Korean stock markets saw a rally yesterday on the first day of the complete ban on short selling, but today it was a completely different story. The Kospi lost more than 2%, while trading on the Kosdaq had to be halted this time because of a sharp fall. This is making some cast doubts over the effect of the short selling ban. Business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Stock markets here, which has surged significantly on Monday, lost momentum in just a single day. According to the Korea Exchange on Tuesday, South Korea's benchmark index, the Kospi, dropped 2.33%, while the secondary Kosdaq market closed down 1.8%. This comes after a massive rally the previous day, which marked the first day of a complete ban on short selling. The decline was attributed to a drop in battery stocks and a shift among foreign investors into net sellers. During the session, trading on the tech-heavy Kosdaq had to be halted for a moment in the morning due to a different reason from the day before. According to the Korea Exchange, a sidecar curve was activated at 11:48 a.m. for 5 minutes when the Kosdaq 150 futures dropped more than 6% from its previous close, with the Kosdaq 150 index plunging about 3%. The sidecar limit is to mitigate volatility in stock markets and comes into play when the Kosdaq 150 futures fluctuates by more than 6% or when the Kosdaq 150 index moves more than 3%. This is in contrast to the previous day when the Kosdaq index rose sharply, triggering the activation of the sidecar curve for the first time in almost 3.5 years. Regarding the ban on the short selling of stock, Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said the same day that it was a necessary measure for now. He added that the government will continue with reform measures to win developed market status from Morgan Stanley Capital International. There has been rising concern over the ban as it is a key factor for MSCI to upgrade South Korea's status. Some experts believe that the momentum of short covering or buying back the borrowed shares in order to return them to the lender may have been exhausted. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
President Yoon visited Daegu on Tuesday for the first time in 7 months. At this year's Live Right Movement nationwide member conference held at the Daegu Expo, the president said it was necessary to expel the corruption that undermines social integration through the Live Right movement. Yoon said the government fully supports the movement's goals and values and noted that building an honest and healthy society required banishing corruption and upholding law and order. Founded in 1989, the movement aims to reform the national consciousness to improve the quality of life and create a, quote, right society. The president last visited Daegu in April. South Korea's shipbuilding industry reclaimed top spot in global ship orders in October, overtaking China after 3 months behind. According to Clarkson Research, a maritime and shipping research company, on Tuesday, Seoul recorded 1.5 million compensated gross tons that accounted for 62% of the total global orders last month. This was followed by Beijing with 820,000, which accounted for 33%. An industry official says although China built 16 more ships than Korea during the same month, Korea was able to rank first place as it focused on vessels of high value. With more investment flowing into the country, the Invest Korea Summit was held today to showcase attractive opportunities for investors. There, the Trade Ministry announced hundreds of millions of dollars worth of foreign direct investment in carbon neutrality, quantum computing, and future cars, among others. Correspondent An Sung-jin reports from Busan.
Invest Korea Summit 2023, which nearly 1,000 foreign investors, domestic and overseas companies, and government officials attended, is the largest domestic event promoting foreign investment. Through the summit on Tuesday, the Trade Ministry announced that nearly $950 million worth of foreign direct investment has been pledged to the high-tech industry, particularly in the field of carbon neutrality, quantum computing, future cars, and semiconductors. Despite reduced global investment due to economic uncertainty, South Korea has reached its highest ever aggregate foreign direct investment this year, up to September, of approximately 31 trillion won, or $24 billion. It also saw an on-year increase of 37.5% of large quantity investments, where more than $300 million were traded. As South Korea garners attention as a hub for the energy and semiconductor industries, the country will continue to see a growing amount of foreign direct investment. Two foreign investors, one of whom secured a deal with a Korean company, suggested potential favorable aspects that make Korea a destination for investors.
Korea is a very attractive market. It's a very outgoing and also technology-guided semiconductor and biotechnology or pharma and such kind of things is definitely a future market.
We recognize the strength and reliability of Korean energy off-takers as customers, but also as really equity partners in our overall energy developments. It also is the commitment by Korean companies to also be very front-footed in the development and rollout and application of the new clean energy technologies.
Apart from the perspective of foreign investors, Trade Minister Bang Mong-gyu said there are other aspects that mark Korea as an attractive market.
A high level of industrial competitiveness, innovation capacity, and an FTA agreement network are the nation's key strengths for foreign direct investment.
Minister Bang also emphasized the role of foreign direct investment companies in Korea's move towards becoming a high-tech industry powerhouse. He also added that government supports these efforts, such as expanding the global supply chain, securing manufacturing capability, and strengthening the technology innovation ecosystem will be necessary. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Busan.
The weather is getting chilly, and with prices of many items going up, so are the prices of popular winter street food, including the famous fish-shaped pastry 붕어빵, which is often considered as one of affordable snacks here in Korea. Yoon has more.
붕어빵 has long been a favorite winter street food in South Korea. The fish-shaped pastry is filled with red bean paste or sugary custard. But the jump in price of this beloved snack shows the reality of the increase in consumer prices. Last winter, customers could get 2 pieces of 붕어빵 for 1,000 won, or roughly 80 cents. But this year, street vendors have prepared signs that read 3 for 2,000 won, roughly $1.50. And in some popular areas, customers will be paying 1,000 won for 1 piece.
It used to be a go-to snack when I have 2,000 won left in my wallet, but I don't think that's possible anymore.
I remember it being 3 pieces for 1,000 won when I was young. If it's 1,000 won for 1 piece, maybe people who really like it will still buy it, but I don't think I will.
What's contributed to the hike in prices of this winter street food is the increase in general prices, from ingredients to fuel costs. The wholesale price of the red bean paste has increased by 33% from previous years. And the prolonged impact of the Russia-Ukraine war is keeping prices of key ingredients very high. Compared to before the war, the price of flour has jumped 36%, sugar 34%, and milk 17%. The jump in consumer prices has shocked customers into eating out less, as it affected everyday go-to foods like fried chicken and black bean noodles. But with no sign of inflation easing, people are now hesitant to enjoy winter street snacks as well. 이은진, Arirang News.
Drug scandals involving celebrities have been grabbing headlines here in Korea these days. The nation was once known as drug-free, but now it seems to be grappling with the growing threat of drugs. As our Choi Soo-hyung reports, illegal substances coming from abroad have notably increased, and drug detection or sniffer dogs at airports are working tirelessly to combat this. She met with one such dog.
South Korea is facing an increasing illegal drug threat with a sharp rise in cases during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. This means that sniffer dogs at Incheon International Airport, which is on the country's front line, are also having busier days. They search around 1,000 items daily among the 600,000 pieces of cargo arriving at the airport's logistics center from abroad. These highly trained dogs can detect even tiny amounts of drugs as small as 0.1 of a gram from over 10 meters away.
We typically train them for 4 years. After qualifying in basic training, a select few undergo a 16-week specialized training program. From there, only a few of them become drug detection dogs deployed to work in ports and special cargo areas.
In 2020, sniffer dogs detected 3.4 kilograms of drugs, and this year, as of September, they have found 8.4 kilograms, primarily methamphetamine, also known as Philipon in South Korea. There are 94 drug detection dogs operated by customs inspectors, and out of these, 22 sniffers are actively working at Incheon Airport.
Here in South Korea, drug detection dogs currently used in operations are divided into 3 groups: dogs in training, ready for immediate deployment, and dogs awaiting retirement.
Handlers partner with sniffer dogs for about 5 years until the dogs retire at around 7 to 8 years old. Handlers also help find new homes for them after their retirement. Korea Customs Service dogs are mainly Labrador Retrievers and Spaniels, breeds known for their strong connection with humans, and these dogs find joy in their work and value their playtime with handlers as a reward.
In this era of pet dogs, people don't fear the animals usually, but some of them still freak out when they meet them at the airport. But detection dogs are gentle and friendly. If you encounter them at the airport, just step aside and wait for them to move, and your journey will be enjoyable with these friendly dogs around.
The KCS is considering ways to gradually increase the supply of sniffer dogs to further strengthen its drug prevention efforts. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Paper cups and plastic straws will continue to be available at restaurants and coffee shops in South Korea. Last November, the Environment Ministry announced that it was going to ban the use of them after a 1-year grace period. However, on Tuesday, the ministry said that it's made a U-turn, citing concerns about the financial burden on small businesses, such as hiring more staff or purchasing dishwashers. Also, the grace period for using plastic straws has been extended indefinitely. This is in response to the higher cost of paper straws and the negative feedback from customers when given as an alternative. The song 7 by BTS member Jungkook has gone platinum. This means that the Recording Industry Association of America, or the RIAA, has recognized that more than 1 million units of the song have been sold in the United States. One digital download or 150 audio or video streams is counted as a single unit. Last year, Jungkook's collaboration with American singer-songwriter Charlie Puth for the song Left and Right received the RIAA's Golden Certification, which marks over 500,000 units sold.
It seems like the season has rapidly changed from autumn to early winter in just one day. For central regions, cold wave advisories that were in place earlier have been lifted. But for Gyeongsang-do province's frigid spells are in store. Another cold wave advisory will be issued at 9 p.m. tonight. Morning conditions will get colder tomorrow. Lows in Seoul will drop to 2 degrees Celsius, but sensible temperatures will feel close to -4. Drastic changes in temperatures can make our bodies more vulnerable to viruses. Please take extra care of your health at this time. Strong winds are in the forecast for the entire nation. For regions with higher elevations, winds will be especially strong, gusting as fast as 30 meters per second. High winds can topple trees and blow off billboards, so please take extra precautions outside. In the regions, we'll see morning temperatures in single figures. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daejeon will be starting off at 2 degrees. Daytime highs will be jumping significantly, causing wide temperature gaps. Highs in Seoul will get up to 15 degrees, Gwangju 18, Busan and Jeju at 19 degrees. In between Thursday and Friday, southern regions will see a round of showers. It's all for now, and to the weather conditions around the world.
And that is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
What would you say in Korean in this exact situation? Find out in Paycheck, conversing in Korean.
Children's
laughter, hope, dream. K-animation belongs in them. Interesting and valuable story that transcends between everyday life and dream. Surprising spectacle where imagination becomes real. An array of subjects catering from infants to adolescents. For our story to reach all corners of the world. K-animation makes healthy laughter for children.
Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power envisions a world flowing with energy as clean as the blue skies, where we can enjoy energy without worrying about the planet by finding new alternative sources to achieve carbon neutrality through clean, carbon-free energy. KHNP is creating a new future for a carbon-free world. Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hello everyone, it's Tuesday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. South Korea is rapidly approaching a demographic cliff as it continues to suffer from a plunging birth rate, the lowest among OECD members. Soared housing prices, high private education expenses for children, and an atmosphere where parents cannot readily avail of childcare leave are all making couples unwilling to have a child. The government has spent a whopping 271 trillion Korean won since 2006. That is more than $200 billion to raise the birth rate, only to fail. How do demographic experts see the country's low birth rate? And what do they see as the main reasons for this? How should the country view this issue to effectively tackle it? For this, we have invited Professor Hwang Myung-jin from Korea University into the studio. Welcome, Professor Hwang.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. And we also have Dr. Willem Adema, a senior economist from the OECD's Social Policy Department. Good to see you, Dr. Adema.
Good to see you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Now, Dr. Adema, first question. South Korea's total fertility rate dipped to 0.78 last year. How is the figure compared to other countries, and how serious is this issue?
Yes, you're right. As you said in your introduction, the total fertility rate in Korea is lower than in any other OECD country at 0.78. The average for the OECD is 1.58. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the trend in OECD countries is downward. In 1970, for example, across the OECD, the average total fertility rate was almost 3 children per woman. And in Korea, it was 4.5 children per woman. So the trend in Korea has been downward much more rapidly than elsewhere. Now, in combination with something which is very enjoyable, i.e. people live longer, you see that the Korean population is aging, and that has implications for the future in terms of working age population, which may be declining unless you draw on migration, for example. And you will also see more fiscal strain because there's a larger group in your population which is elderly and has needs in terms of pensions and long-term care.
Right, I see. It's quite unfortunate to hear the figure is much lower than the OECD average. Now, Dr. Adima, we need to know the reasons behind such a low fertility rate if we are to tackle each of them. Long working hours have been cited as one of the reasons. How long are working hours in South Korea, and how does that affect the birth rate?
Well, I mean, it's not just the working hours. It's the whole atmosphere at the workplace culture. It's the long working hours. It's the habit of socializing after work with your colleagues. It's the long commuting times. And if you all add that up, then you have very little time to engage in a family life or even go out dating prior to establishing a family. So that is the issue. The thing is, which is very important to keep in mind, there is no single one cause of the dropping fertility rate. It is a combination of factors, sometimes in some part of the workplace culture, the lack of policy support, in which case the Korean government has done a lot, as you mentioned in your introduction, to try and address that issue. But there's also issues around the cost of housing, the cost of private education, and there is a change in attitudes going on across the OECD. Maybe it is sharper and more pronounced in Korea than elsewhere, but there is a growing group of younger people who find that they can value their life, their well-being, without having children, without establishing a family. So there is a change in norms going on. It started recently, and we haven't got the very hard-nosed evidence to underpin that, but we can see it happening around us.
All right, I see. Well, we are going to tap on each and every reason for behind the low fertility rate. But before that, Professor Hwang, Dr. Adima already mentioned the issues in the atmosphere of the workplace. And South Korea has a system of letting parents to go on a child care leave after the maternity leave is over. But many reports say that it is not being readily used. Why is this?
Well, as of November 2023, we does have the system that allows people to take the child care leave after the maternity leave. But in fact, despite the system is existing that provide benefit, it's very widely unused, and there are several reasons for that. First one is traditional mother's image and roles of a woman's role. Mother have to take care of their children. That's one thing. That's very firmly existing throughout the society over the years. Second one is financial consideration. If mothers or parents take the child care leave, then their benefits, especially wages, not fully compensated, and there are no other alternative income sources. That might cause another problem. Well, third one is more serious problem. It's about job security. If you take too long to take one maternity leave and second child care leave, you take 2 or 3 years in consecutive, and they're endanger the job security. So people, especially parents, very hardly take over that kind, unless they have alternative resources. And more importantly, maybe is from my concern is the culture and the workplace stigma. Anybody who take the benefit, some people might think that they're taking advantage of the system too eagerly. That is pretty much against our social norm in terms of the regulation and law, but still people have to support any absence or leaves of their co-workers. That really causes some problem and conflict in the working places. That might be some of the reason that people are not actively taking over this child care benefit.
Right, I see. I mean, the atmosphere should definitely change. And that being said, Professor Hwang, the Presidential Committee on Aging Society and Population Policy is going to introduce mandatory child care leave, which will start right after the end of maternity leave and no longer require approval by employers. But some say this is impractical. What measures should be in place to make this a effective measure?
Well, I think law is law. To make it successfully implemented, we have to see how people live and interact with each other so far, and how that might have changed. People's behavior pattern might be changed after this. Well, some pessimistic view is, I think, the widely prevailing, because laws are not very micro accurate. Well, of course, the law is law, so, that's like, as you mentioned, the atmosphere, environment. And then to make this kind of the new laws and policies successfully implemented to our society, we have to understand that we live in very complex and heterogeneous society, and even younger generation might have different life goals and the reason to raise their children, and maybe the feeling burdensome of how they live and support their children are very different and complicated. So instead of enacting and passing the new laws and regulations, we might have to think about what they really want. Right. Well, regulation is definitely not the first option that we have to think about. And we have to listen to their voices, and they're quite different voices to hear.
Right, I cannot agree more. Now, Dr. Adema, the reason why we're having discussion is to make a society where employees feel they can take childcare leave more actively. How would such an atmosphere be created?
Well, changing attitudes always takes time. So it won't happen from one day to the other. But employers can do their fair share in this area. In Korea, a lot of women have been hesitant to take even maternity leave in order, and one of the reasons would be that they fear that their colleagues may have to work more if they take leave. One of the issues around that, of course, is that employers could take on replacement workers, as happens in many OECD countries, to cover for the leave period. So that is one thing. In terms of fathers taking leave, companies can be encouraging their workers to take the leave. It is well known that, and that is across the OECD, but in Korea and Japan, it is a particularly strong feeling that if men take their leave, this may be having negative repercussions for their career later on. And the company, middle management, has to make it clear to their workers that no, it is good, it is okay if you take your leave, and they could lead by example. In terms of policy, the policies are there, but could there be stronger policing of the policies? Could there be more effective sanctions on employers if they don't comply with the legislation?
Right.
Then again, like I said, it's not going to happen from one day to another. Changing norms, attitudes, and workplace cultures takes time.
Right, it's not going to be easy, but we definitely need to go through this tough process to make an environment where employees can freely use their maternity leave and also the child care leave. All right, well, Professor Hwang, another reason for the low birth rate is high private education expenses. How much economic pressure are South Korean parents feeling in terms of child's education, and how is that affecting birth rate?
The cost of private education and housing are not just the two main reasons for the low fertility, but the whole cause of the social problem in general in the nation. Well, speaking of the cost of private education, the financial stress might be the main causes, consequences of, And the second one is that really affect or make people to determine a fewer children at birth and raise, because the parents want to strategize raising one or two children instead of the multiple children, because they need to put more emphasis on education. And that also causes of delays in childbirth, because if you're not financially solvent and to raise the children, that the people want to delay the making. Even the married couples might have considered delaying their childbirth.
Right.
And another thing is, of course, always the gender equality, and this time the class and different types of inequality. Well, because of the high cost of private education, the class mobilization is seriously hindering that, because the overall problem in society in terms of the vitality and energy and reform and all the necessary changes, actively adapting to the changes in society and environment. And because of the high cost of private education, this is quite concerned that public education has not been playing its own critical roles, and where are teachers, and the recent days teachers might have so many regret of the current situation because they are not respected as much as they used their parents' generation. They're all the cause are I don't know why is that so important to have raise children and educate them. I mean, we have some obvious reason, but the consequence is not really something that we expected, and it's not really a productive and functioning way. So we have to stop having this kind of social phenomena.
Right, it's a complicated issue indeed. Well, Dr. Adema, not just high education expensive, high housing costs could also be one of the reasons, and this could be highly related to population concentration in the metropolitan area. How severe is population concentration in South Korea, and how do such high housing expenses affect the fertility rate?
Well, you've got a lot of people living in big cities. I mean, if you've got a population of 51 million, 10 million is in Koreans are in Seoul, but the wider area of Seoul includes Incheon with another couple of million people. So the concentration of people is quite sharp. How is this affecting family formation? Well, first of all, if youngsters cannot leave their parents' place, then it's hard for them to establish relationships with others and find their way on the property ladder. In fact, a lot of young Koreans have great difficulty buying a place or stumping up the on-site payment. So even private rental issues are important. If you cannot establish yourself in the labor market and in the housing market, it's difficult to establish yourself in the marriage market, so to speak. So the housing costs first negatively affect family formation for very young people who want to leave their parental home. Then for young couples, it is difficult and expensive to find a place where they could have a small family. And if you want larger families, you obviously need more space, and then you have to move out to an even more expensive place. So housing costs play a role in fertility trends, and much more so than in the past. In recent work, in a recent study we did, we found that in econometric modeling, it has a negative effect on fertility trends.
All right, I see. Well, Dr. Adema, up until now, we have been talking about the reasons behind this low fertility rate. And now I'd like to tap on the solutions. For South Korea's looming demographic cliff, some say increasing the number of immigrants could be the only solution. Could this help?
Well, it's not the only solution, but it certainly can help. When you have a dwindling working age population, a well-managed migration policy can certainly help to sustain your working age population and to sustain the skills needed to keep your economy going. So from that perspective, it can certainly make a contribution. And if I look at the experience other countries, other OECD countries have with this in terms of the fertility behavior of migrants, they may have a higher fertility behavior when in their country of origin than in most of the countries, OECD countries where they went to. But within 1 or 2 generations, their behavior adjusts to their new country. So yes, it will be important in terms of economic growth, contribution to the working age population and the skill set population. In terms of fertility behavior, it will have also an effect on sustaining birth rates, but at some point the behavior of migrants will become similar to the original South Korean population.
All right, I see your point. Now, Professor Hwang, it's not like South Korea did not put any efforts to tackle this issue. I mean, it spent more than $200 billion to tackle this issue over the past 16 years, but nothing has properly worked. Why is this?
Well, I always believe that the speed is not important. The direction is more important. But so far, we have pretty much studied about the causes and the consequences and political policy reaction against the population change, especially the downturned trend of low fertility. Most of theories and approaches or perspectives are pretty much what we learn from Western society, especially Malthusian and neo-Malthusian approaches. And that has a little different background of what society should be and what people are likely and how we make a family and how we work kind of thing. Individualism and based on religion and Christianity. All those are created and developed during the Enlightenment Renaissance era. Korea might have a similar civilization, and we have the Confucius tradition and philosophy, and that pretty much dominate and conquered 1,000, I guess, years of our society. Similarity and difference are existing, the Western and the Eastern, the philosophy about the country, state, the family, individual. And the most important thing is the family. Korean and traditional Asian or Confucius family or familyness is far different from the Western society, especially after the Industrial Revolution, years ago. And while Western society have more focus on individual liberation, that's pretty much gained from the income stability and political participation. Korean society might have developed our own civilization in modern society based on the family. Family is the reason and the only means to end kind of thing. But since we had the one child, not China has the policy, but Korea also takes a similar the very intensive child what do you call it, the fertility, oppressing the policy, childbirth policy. So one child is not really nuclear family. From my understanding, the family system theory might explain that the parent system and the children system and the exchange of parent-child system are two subsystems that really work together in one nuclear family. But since we had only one child, there's no children system, and only child is the center of the family system. And parent, is supposed to be a romantic relationship, might have to focus more on child care, and they forget how to live in a romantic relationship with the spouses. That causes more problem than other economic war, the education, housing problem. Korean couple, maybe not everybody, but for few youngsters and my generation as well, we forgot how to love each other as a parent. I mean, the husband and wives. We have to regain the reason that why families exist. It's love, and we just forgot about it. I mean, I'm talking to naive and more in the abstractive term, but that is the value system that we have to sustain and maintain, and that's a little different from Western's advising and teaching on us. So maybe we have to gain our own insight about what to then, how we develop our own policy and the reaction toward this demographic changes.
Right, we'd have to consider more of South Korea's own characteristics when it comes to tackling this kind of issues. All right, well, I'd like to ask many more questions to our experts, but unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Professor Hwang, for your time and insights.
Thanks so much for listening to me.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Adema, for your time and insights as well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll see you the next time around.
Sure. Thank you. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
해외에서 경기가 있을 때마다 스스로 다짐하는 말이 있어요. 나는 대한민국을 대표하는 선수이기 전에 대한민국 국민이다. 해외에서 자부심을 갖는 가장 좋은 방법은 재외선거를 놓치지 않는 거죠. 인터넷으로 쉽고 간편하게 신고 신청할 수 있는 제22대 국회의원 재외선거. 소중한 한 표를 위해 신고 신청하는 당신이 대한민국의